This is the story of Little Red Riding Hood, a tale about a young girl wearing a red cape and a big bad wolf. There once was a sweet little maid who lived with her father and mother in a pretty little cottage at the end of the village. At the further end of the wood was another pretty cottage, and in it lived her grandmother. Everybody loved this little girl. Her grandmother perhaps loved her most of all and gave her a great many pretty things. Once she gave her a red cloak with a hood which she always wore, so people called her Little Red Riding Hood. One morning, Little Red Riding Hood's mother said, "Put on your things and go to see your grandmother. She has been ill. Take along this basket for her. I have put in it eggs, butter, and cake, and other dainties." It was a bright and sunny morning. Red Riding Hood was so happy that at first she wanted to dance through the wood. All around her grew pretty wild flowers, which she loved so well, and she stopped to pick a bunch for her grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood wandered from her path and was stooping to pick a flower when from behind her a gruff voice said,
"Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood."
Little Red Riding Hood turned around and saw a great big wolf. But Little Red Riding Hood did not know what a wicked beast the wolf was, so she was not afraid.
"What have you in that basket, Little Red Riding Hood?"
"Eggs and butter and cake, Mr. Wolf."
"And where are you going with them, Little Red Riding Hood?"
"I am going to my grandmother, who is ill, Mr. Wolf."
"Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood?"
"Along that path, past the wild rose bushes, then through the gate at the end of the wood, Mr. Wolf." Then Mr. Wolf again said,
"Good morning,"
and set off, and Little Red Riding Hood again went in search of wild flowers. At last he reached the porch covered with flowers and knocked on the door of the cottage. "Who's there?" called the grandmother.
"Little Red Riding Hood,"
said the wicked wolf. "Press the latch, open the door, and walk in," said the grandmother. The wolf pressed the latch and walked in where the grandmother lay in bed. He made one jump at her, but she jumped out of bed into a closet. Then the wolf put on the cap which she had dropped and crept under the bedclothes. In a short while, Little Red Riding Hood knocked at the door and walked in, saying, "Good morning, grandmother. I have brought you eggs, butter, and cake, and here is a bunch of flowers I gathered in the wood." As she came nearer the bed, she said, "My, what big ears you have, grandmother."
"All the better to hear you with, my dear."
"My, what big eyes you have, grandmother."
"All the better to see you with, my dear."
"But grandmother, what a big nose you have."
"All the better to smell you with, my dear."
"But grandmother, what a big mouth you have."
"All the better to eat you up with, my dear," he said, as he sprang at Little Red Riding Hood. Just at that moment, Little Red Riding Hood's father was passing the cottage, and he heard her scream. He rushed in, saved Little Red Riding Hood from the big bad wolf. Everybody was happy that Little Red Riding Hood had escaped the wolf. Then Little Red Riding Hood's father carried her home, and they lived happily ever after. The end. Now I'm going to show you how you can make your very own basket, just like Little Red Riding Hood. To make your baskets, you will need a couple pieces of paper, some scissors, some colors to decorate it, crayons or markers or stamps or stickers, a ruler, a stapler or some tape or even glue, and you might also want a pencil. We're going to use one piece of paper to make the basket and another piece of paper to make the handle. You can make these the same color if you want, or you can mix and match, whichever you prefer. The piece of paper used for the handle, you're going to cut a thin rectangle, just a nice strip to make the handle. And the other piece of paper, we are going to turn into a square. If you already have square paper, you can use that. But if not, this is just a regular size piece of paper. It's a little thicker. The thicker paper you use, the sturdier it's going to be. So my paper is an 8.5 inch by 11 inches here. So I'm going to make this long side only an 8.5 inch long, so that'll be a nice square for our basket. So I will just measure out 8.5 inches on both sides and cut off the extra. So now we have a square piece of paper. On one side, you can decorate it however you want. I made this little plaid pattern, but you can use markers, crayons, stickers, glitter, whatever you have to decorate the outside of your basket. On the inside, what we're going to do is draw 4 lines in the corners, and these are what we're going to cut. I made my lines 3.5 inches long. You can make your lines as long as you want. The longer you make it, the taller your basket will be, but the actual inside will be much smaller. Then we are simply going to take our scissors and cut along the lines. To fold the baskets, we are going to pull up one side, and we're going to take one corner and fold it into the middle. And you can either staple or tape it there. Then the same with the other side here, so that we have a little corner. And I'm just going to tape these sides so it looks something like this. And I will just repeat on the other side. Just going to fold the middle part in and tape these sides in the center there. So now you should have a nice little basket. So you can leave it like that, or you can take a thin strip of paper and fasten it to either side to give you a little handle. Ta-da! Now you have your very own basket, just like Little Red Riding Hood. Watch out for those wolves.